Hey, this is Cam Brower, and I want to personally thank you for listening. I get a lot of feedback and show ideas, and I'd like to thank you and also give a shout out to my friends Dave Ross in Canada, Stephanie in Scotland, Kevin, who's with his wife in California, Bruce, Robin in Montana, and Gary Kay. Thank you for making this show about the people behind the experience. Stay in touch because I would love to hear more about you and your alien life. I also want to ask you to please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you are listening and hit those like buttons and also leave a comment. You do that and it makes it so much easier for others to find me. It also helps me produce more content and find even more amazing guests. Please message me or email your guest suggestions. You can find my email address at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. My Alien Life is on YouTube, and you can enjoy each show on your TV or mobile device. Tonight, Dave Spinks is here, and we are talking about everything paranormal and Bigfoot.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
My Alien Life is recorded live from atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you will find my email address, all previously recorded shows, and more. I am Cameron Brower. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, one, zero, and liftoff.
Dave Spinks is in the studio tonight, and if you check out Dave at his website or YouTube channel, you'll notice Dave does it all. Dave isn't your average paranormal investigator. He's out there investigating UFOs, Sasquatch, and hauntings all over West Virginia, and he's even investigated hauntings in Europe. I'd like to welcome Dave to the show. Thank you for being here, and welcome, sir, and it's an honor to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. My pleasure.
Yeah, that's great. I've been checking out everything that you have on YouTube, and you got a really great looking website, and really impressed by that. It's really interesting because there's a lot of things that you do that I don't know much about. And as I mentioned, when it comes to paranormal, you do it all. Are you an overachiever, or do you love getting in the mud and seeing who comes out the dirtiest?
No, man. I mean, it's just it's a fascination I've had since a young man due to my own experiences, and one thing led to another, and I just got enthralled with all of it. And I've been pursuing answers to some of man's greatest questions ever since. Are we alone in the universe? Are there unknown creatures walking among us? And what happens to us when we die? I mean, to me, that's three of man's greatest questions that haven't really been answered yet. We get bits and pieces of it at times from numerous eyewitness accounts and people's experiences, but we really don't have any solid answers to any of those questions at this point.
So let's spend some time talking about what you do and where. Is paranormal investigation now a full-time gig for you?
It's more of a hobby gone insane, man. I retired from government service in 2011, and I took what I do public, and people seem to really like it. I've been doing this stuff all through my working life as well when I could. Obviously, when you're working, you're on a much tighter schedule, and me being in the military and law enforcement, I was on a very tight schedule. So I didn't get to quite do as many investigations as I wanted, but I did quite a few over the many years of my, time investigating and researching these various topics.
So, did you do investigation and research while you were working with the government? Did you? I know it wasn't part of your job, but was it a hobby then that just became more of a lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, you have friends, and they know, some of your closer friends knew what knew what I did. And then, they would run across someone that would be experiencing something, in their home, or they knew someone that saw something that they couldn't quite explain. And they said, hey, I know a guy that does that. And that's, basically, I would get those type of leads on a consistent basis over the years. And I would go check them out, interview the people and, investigate the situation and see what kind of answers I could come up with.
So just give me an idea of what you research and how many different things that you have going on at the same time.
Oh man, it's just crazy. I mean, basically I have on my website, I have a reporting site so people can chime in and message me on, email me or call me on the number provided, and they can share an account with me. If I think it's compelling enough, I will, contact them and go from there. And then I will go out and investigate the situation and see what's going on with it. And, every case is different. You never know what you're going to get, especially with hauntings. You got to go in someone's home or their place of business and try to get answers for them, and then try to help get rid of that stuff if the case calls for it.
So is there anything that you don't investigate? Paranormal wise?
I pretty much investigate everything under the sun, man. I mean, if I think it's a compelling encounter and I think the people are credible, then I will go out and investigate it and see, if I can come up with answers for those folks as to what they saw or encountered that specific time.
So I am interested in the paranormal, but mostly I'm interested in the people who do investigative research and investigation into the paranormal. I'm studying the people in the process, and I love meeting people like you and hearing your approach. So what's your approach when it comes to paranormal investigation? If somebody calls and is having an issue or wants you to check something out, how do you meet with them and get the whole process started?
Well, like I said, they email me and I call them, and then I put them through an interview process. And I hate to say this, but I have to play devil's advocate, with some of these folks, and I try to catch them up and see if they're lying. I'll ask them the same question many different times in different ways and see if I can trip them up. If I do trip them up, and nowadays you have to be careful too, because there's a lot of people out there that just want to get on TV. So you'll run into all these different sorts of folks that are claiming to have witnessed this or experienced this, or they're having this type of phenomenon going on in their homes. And when it's all said and done, you find out that, it's all about trying to get on a TV show or whatever. So unfortunately, you do have that type of scenario you got to deal with. And, that's just how it is nowadays with the paranormal and the TV world combined, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm sure. So are your ideas and techniques your own, or have you had a mentor to guide you, train you over the years? Because I would imagine, there's got to be a point where, you're going to strike off or out into your own realm and your own investigation. But when does that happen? How do you feel that you have the experience to do that?
Well, I kind of approach what I do with a law enforcement background, so to speak, and I use some of those techniques that I've learned in training and whatnot to, and I, utilize that in my paranormal investigations. And also, I've worked with many, many well-known people in the field over the years, and you kind of learn and pick up things off of each other when you work together. So, if you see something another investigator's trying and it happens to be working, then why not implement that yourself? That's some of the things you have to do, because it just makes for a better rounded investigation altogether.
And I would guess, coming from a law enforcement background, that approach possibly, and how you deal with people, especially the ones that may not be legit and turn out to be a little sketchy, that probably gives you a little bit more shoulder or leg room to call your own shots and not be dictated by what they have.
Yeah, and there's many different aspects you got to take a look at, and you have to, you have to have a pretty vast array of contacts in this field. Like there's times that I will deal with certain folks that I think they need to have a psychologist interview done, just to make sure we got to rule those type of things out. Or you might come across someone who happens to be on prescription medication or doing illegal narcotics, but that doesn't mean they are not experiencing paranormal phenomena. That can be also triggering some of that stuff. So there's all kinds of different ways you have to think outside the box and things you have to utilize. You have to go to the toolbox, so to speak, and utilize your contacts in those type of different scenarios. And when you build up friendships over the years, many people have their own backgrounds and their ways of doing things, like we said. But you can, if there's ever something that, say, someone that specializes more in one aspect of the fields than you, say symbolism or something to that aspect, then you draw off of those folks. And, you call them up, say, hey, I got this case, I'm working on this. What do you know about this? Or you send them this, and you get their expertise and their experience on those certain situations. You got to draw off of that type of stuff.
So you brought up an interesting point, and you may meet people that do need help of some sort that you can't provide. So do you have other professionals? I know you mentioned that, but other like medical professionals that you partner with, or that you ask for help if somebody does need, or you think that they need professional psychiatric help?
Absolutely, you have to, and that's one of the misconceptions. People, all these investigative groups out there today, these young kids, they think they can watch a TV show and they can just go out and go to a haunted location for an hour, and that makes them an investigator. That's just really not how it works. In a lot of these cases, some of these people, like I said, they're on psychotropic medications. They're on, they have mental disabilities or whatever the case. And sometimes you have to run these people through the gambit to, rule out that it's not one of those type of situations that is influencing them versus the true, paranormal phenomena is influencing them. So there's so many different ways you got to think outside the box, and so many different scenarios you can run with this stuff, and things that may be causing this type of phenomena to happen. There's cases that I've seen that people thought they were experiencing paranormal phenomena, and it was thought that the person themselves has some type of ESP, or they can move things with their own mind. There's so many different ways you can run with this stuff. It's crazy. It's actually mind-boggling. You can literally spend a whole lifetime on one case if you do it the right way. Some of this stuff you're never going to get rid of. We don't understand it enough, and it's very hard to actually get back to the bottom of what's causing these things. And then once you do that, you have to try to figure out how to get rid of it, especially in a negative situation, if it's a negative type of haunting, malevolent, or whatever the case may be. What you see on TV and stuff, folks got to remember, most of that is for entertainment purposes only. That's not the real deal. That's not the real boots on the ground type people that are doing this daily, and who are putting a lot of their own time, money, and effort into investigating and researching this paranormal stuff that's going on.
I think the best thing I just heard you say was that there's a lot of things that you don't know. And you do hear of people, or you hear people, and there are TV shows where these people portray themselves as a know-it-all about everything paranormal, and it's not true. There are so many gray areas. And when you encounter something that you don't know, or you're totally stumped, what happens then?
Well, then you got to reach out for help yourself, and you try to bring in other people. if you don't do that, you're just being pretty much naive and egotistical. You know, there's cases when you need help. You know, everybody, all of us have needed help or another viewpoint, so to speak, on some of these things we've dealt with. And you draw off of other people that you trust and you know that have vast experience in a certain situation, you know, and that's just how you got to do things. I mean, I often say on all these shows I'm on, there are no experts in this field. There are none. You might be specifically gifted in something, you know, you're very knowledgeable in how, say, EMF works, or how it, you know, or how ITC ghost boxes work, or whatever the case. But that doesn't make you an expert in the paranormal phenomenon. Nobody is an expert. All we can do is make educated guesses based off of our experience level in this field. And you know, unfortunately, on TV they want to give everybody a label, you know, such and such a paranormal expert, and there's really no such thing. I mean, to be honest, I mean, yeah, you got a lot of people out there that have vast experience in the fields, various fields, you know, in ufology, cryptozoology, and hauntings and whatnot. But there's just really no one person out there that you can say, well, that's the expert in everything. There just isn't. There isn't such a thing.
Right.
You know?
And I think there are countless, again, paranormal investigators out there, and there's a new TV show every day, and some of them do a real decent job at portraying what you do, and some aren't that great. But do you feel that investigators who have a TV show devote a lesser quality or effort to their paranormal exploration?
Well, you know, here's the real deal, man. I mean, most of the people you see on TV are nothing more than actors. Okay, and that's not saying everybody, but most of them are actors portraying other folks. You know, they don't care if they have to fake stuff. You know, you got to remember, when you see a TV show, you know, it's a big budget thing. It's all about money. And I'm not saying, you know, I've been on TV shows and they've twisted my words around and they've added stuff that didn't happen, but I'm totally honest when I speak about them at events. I say, look, all right, we're going to watch this show I was on, and I'm going to tell you what was real and what was not real, you know, because I believe that that's very important to share with people, so they understand the difference between real paranormal investigating and the TV world. Okay, there's a big, huge difference, and yeah, it's good for the field in a lot of ways, but it's also bad for the field because, you know, like I said, these younger generation folks that watch these TV shows, they think they can watch a show and, oh, I can do that. I'm going to go buy some equipment like they have, and I'm going to go to a haunted place and I'm going to do this, and then bam, you know, I'm the man or whatever. I'm just like so-and-so on this show. That's just not how it works, you know. You know, you can spend hours upon hours in a location and never document anything specific, you know, anything that I would consider legit paranormal evidence. And then you have a flurry of activity within a 2 to 3 minute time frame, and that's it, and it stops. You just never know what you're going to get. And each case is different. You know, each location is different. Different tragedies happen at each location, or different types of death, or other type of just horrible, vile things could have occurred there. You got to dig into the history. You got to do your research, and you know, you got to make educated guesses. And the best thing I can do to tell these younger generation folks is to get with people that have been around for a long time, if they will have you, because a lot of times they don't have time to coach and mentor people, but that's just how it is, you know, and you got to try to do that and learn some things. And I always tell, like, you know, Grandpa said, use your ears more than your mouth, you know. So unfortunately, you know, everybody wants to get a TV show these days, and that's just not what it's really about. It's about helping people and trying to find some answers, you know.
So what do you think is missing from paranormal investigation TV, and how would you like to see it portrayed?
Oh, I'd like to see real people, you know, real investigators, people that have many years in the field, more of that going on, and having a real show where they show what goes on. But sometimes, let's face it, that's just not entertaining. You know, sometimes, like I said, you're going to set in a location for hours upon hours and not get anything. Sometimes you never get nothing. Sometimes you get a whole bunch of crazy stuff. You just never know what you're going to get. And TV's about money and budget. They got to have something to happen. You know, it's all about ratings. If you don't get the ratings, guess what? You don't get the TV commercials and you don't make no money. So just remember that, folks.
So when you go into let's say you go into a haunted house and you're doing an investigation, again, you're not going to have those moments, or you're going to have moments, but you're not, most of those moments are sitting quietly or doing whatever you do to wait for those moments that you can record or you can investigate further. But so what's that anticipation like when you're waiting for something to happen and it's a dark house and it's in the middle of the night? I mean, what's that feel like?
Oh, I mean, you know, a lot of people, I've seen many people claim to be this and that, and then something happens and they run out, you know, like a whipped dog. You know, it's just, you know, you got to be ready at all times. You just never know when something's going to happen, and you have to be prepared. You know, you got to, you know, make sure you have extra batteries, make sure your equipment's set up properly, and be ready on a second's notice to start, you know, filming or whatever you got to do to try to document that evidence.
Why are you a paranormal investigator? I mean, what happened in your life that suddenly made you decide that this is something you'd like to pursue further and just do?
Well, you know, what started me in this, and I've talked about this many times, is that me and my grandfather were fishing here on a river in West Virginia, and we saw what I can only describe as a Bigfoot. And it was really mad, and it was throwing big giant rocks at us from across the river. And it scared the hell out of me. I was a 13-year-old boy, and, you know, it was just, it changed my life and set me on a course into the direction I am now. So and it's in a book, you know, I wrote all about it in a book called West Virginia Bigfoot. And the book has many other people's experiences, from law enforcement officers to school teachers, doctors, lawyers. You know, I think it's very important to document all these different people's sightings, because not everybody's crazy, and you got to take thousands upon thousands of sightings. You got to take that into consideration, because people are definitely seeing something. They don't know what it is, but it's like me when I was a kid. I wanted answers. What the heck was that I saw that day? And I soon discovered, you know, back in those days, I discovered that many other people were seeing the same type of thing I had saw, and I knew then for sure, hey, I'm not nuts. You know, I saw it too. They saw it, and you know, we didn't have the luxury of the internet back in those days, so I had to go rely on the local libraries, magazine articles, newspaper articles. And then I saw the show In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, and you know, there was a guy on there named Hans Holzer, and he was doing a ghost investigation, and he had the same type of recorder I had just gotten for Christmas or my birthday. I don't remember which one, but and I said, hey, I can do that. And so, you know, and I've had several other experiences growing up that, you know, and that's what set me on my course. And, you know, after seeing those shows and seeing that many other people from all around the world, not just here in the United States, were seeing these type of things and experiencing these type of things, I said, man, that's what I want to do, you know. And, you know, I was fascinated by it, and I'm still fascinated by it.
So that was you. How old were you when that happened?
13
years old, and you were with your grandfather. So what was the conversation like after that? I mean, did you both look at each other and just kind of, I mean, what do you even say?
That's the thing. Well, that's the thing. My grandfather was a Baptist minister after World War II for 40 years, and there was no conversation of it after we got out of there. You know, we left everything there. We had to trek up a 2-mile dirt road, and I thought the truck was going to break down because we were bottoming out because he was gunning it out of there so fast. We drove around for a little bit, and then he pulled over, and he said, you know, son, we better not talk about this because people are going to think we're crazy. And plus he had his parishioners he had to worry about, and he didn't want them thinking that he was crazy or drinking or, you know, doing drugs or whatever. So we never talked about it. And during all that time, I was still, you know, looking for answers. I still wanted to know what it was. And I never talked about, even though I was actively investigating the paranormal, and I was, you know, by this time I've been on numerous radio shows, and some TV stuff and whatnot, and doing my YouTube, I'd never talked about that story. And then when he died, I said, I got to tell that story because that's what really started me in all of this. And I put it in a friend of mine's book series, Woodknocks by David Weatherly. It's a Bigfoot series, an awesome series, has some of the biggest names in the cryptozoology field that contributed to that series. And I wrote my story along with some other West Virginia Bigfoot stuff in there. And, since then it's pretty much gone crazy. And then I also wrote about it in my West Virginia Bigfoot book, along with many other sightings of, different various folks around the state that I've interviewed over the years, and other stories I've read about and seen about, seen in other things. And so that's pretty much where it's at. And my new book just came out a couple of weeks ago called West Virginia Hauntings. It's a series I'm doing, a whole series of books I'm doing. Volume 1 just came out, and it's doing really well. People are seeming to dig it a lot. And that's dealing with cases all over the state that I've investigated. And the first 2 volumes will have at least one investigation I've done in every single county of this state. And then the other books will just be like a whole mix of different counties, because obviously some counties have more investigations than others, over the years. So I'm excited about that series. And I'm also working on a new UFO book on West Virginia UFOs, and several other projects I've got in the works right now.
So let me know, what's your favorite type of investigative work, paranormal work? What do you love?
I love it all, man. I really do. I think a lot of this stuff is interconnected. Recently, in recent years, a lot of reports have been coming in from all over the country and even all over the world, where people have seen strange lights in the sky, and then them and some of the neighbors maybe has seen a Bigfoot right after, or vice versa. They saw a Bigfoot, then they saw strange lights in the skies. So I think a lot of this stuff is interconnected in some way. And that's, you gotta, like I said, you gotta think outside the box. Nothing is set in stone when it comes to the whole paranormal genre. We just don't have enough answers to these questions.
West Virginia, where you experienced, or where you had the Bigfoot experience, is it known for Sasquatch?
Oh yeah, man, the whole state's known for Bigfoot. I mean, I live right on the edge of what's called the Monongahela National Forest, which is a huge, heavy hotspot for Bigfoot sightings all throughout many, many years. And the state has sightings going back to the 1800s, man. I mean, early loggers that were in this area claimed to have been attacked by a group of these Sasquatches, while they were trying to cut wood and whatnot, for the big cities. They would cut a lot of this lumber, and they would ship it all over the country to, help build New York City and all these other big cities. And there was many accounts. Well, back in those days, this area was so rural that, a lot of reports didn't make it out of here. They were filed with local churches and whatnot like that. So, and then, a traveler would come by, and then word of mouth would spread. Hey, a group of loggers was in here, and they got, they said these large, hairy, bipedal creatures were throwing logs at them and rocks and everything else when they were cutting down the woods. And if you think about the Native American aspect of Bigfoot, they say they're the protectors of the forest and whatnot. And that makes sense. People coming in, cutting down the woods, they don't like that very much. So, like I said, you got to constantly think outside the box and look at this stuff from many different angles and many different points of view.
I've heard there's been a lot of sightings in the Northwest, but is Sasquatch all over the U.S. and Canada?
Oh yeah, man. I think they're like people, man. I just think they're small groups. We have white people, black people, Native Americans, Asians. I think their Bigfoot is very similar in nature. However, I don't know, there's so many theories as to what these creatures are, such as, some people think they are the missing link between man and ape. Others think they're interdimensional creatures. They kind of morph in and morph out of our reality as we know it. Some people, and another interesting theory is some people think we're seeing the ghosts of a long dead extinct ape species. So like I said, until we have a body, or something we can physically study, we won't know. But it's very interesting to hear all those different aspects on it. I know what I saw was a living, breathing creature that was shaking 50 and 60-foot trees and raising one heck of a ruckus, screaming and making these ungodly howls and screams across the river that just echoed and thundered through your body. I had nightmares about it for several years after, and I wouldn't go into the woods for a long time after that. But, you got to take everything into account because nothing is irrelevant when it comes to this stuff.
I think it seems like they're a wooded creature. Do you have any other accounts that they showed up somewhere else other than forests? Or I haven't heard of one being on a prairie out in the open. But what about?
Oh, there's accounts of Bigfoot in the desert, man.
Really?
There's the Monongahela Monster. There's all kinds of accounts all over the world. Look at the Yeti. In deep Arctic, subarctic temperatures. Supposed bipedal creature known as Bigfoot. No other word for it other than Yeti or Bigfoot. It goes by many names. Even here in West Virginia, there's local names for it, county by county. Some call it a woolly booger, some call it a blue devil, and whatnot, and then several other names. In Ohio, it's known as the grass man. Pacific Northwest, more like Sasquatch, Bigfoot and Sasquatch. So, there's names all over the world for these type of creatures. Some are big, some are smaller, just like people.
Are they in Montana? Because I'm in Montana.
I think there's some reports in Montana that, check the BFRO website. That's only, the BFRO is a good reporting website because, Moneymaker was the first guy to put that reporting site, such a reporting site together. But there's also many other reporting sites, and that's not even taking into account all the individual investigators such as myself out there who get reports on a daily or even weekly, daily, weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever, from many different areas of the country and the world. So, you can imagine, and then just imagine if you take into consideration the people that don't report the sightings they've had because fear of ridicule and whatnot. The sightings are in the tens of thousands, if not more, and I often call West Virginia the Pacific Northwest of the East Coast because there's literally thousands upon thousands of sightings here in this little bitty state that I live in. But you got to take into account too that the state is highly rural. It's nothing but pure, mountains. The whole state is mountainous. It's known as the Mountain State or Wild, Wonderful West Virginia. And, there's places in this state that people have probably never set foot in or even, possibly been in 100 years because it's so rugged in some areas. So there's plenty of caves, plenty of food for a creature such as Bigfoot to exist. And many, many people report seeing this type of creature in the state.
And I think you're right. I don't think we have any clue to people that have actually had a sighting and they don't report it. One of my favorite things is to check the MUFON site, and they have different UFO sightings. And, I see them in Montana all the time, but I look at it, and the UFO they actually saw it in 1996, but they're reporting it in 2019. So, I can understand that, but it just seems, it seems a shame.
You have a lot of people in all aspects like that. They had this profound experience at one time in their life, and maybe they're on their deathbed now, and they want someone to know what they saw. So they report it, they call up, they get on the MUFON website and put their sighting on there, or they tell it to somebody like me. It's ungodly the amount of accounts I get from very old, folks. You get to talking to people and they say, well, yeah, I saw this in the sky back in 1942, and I didn't want to say anything, because you got to remember too, you got to take into account in certain areas of the country is called the Bible Belt, and they don't want you talking about anything to do with hauntings or anything because they think it's purely nothing but demons. And you can't talk about that stuff. And it wasn't that long ago. You couldn't talk about any of this stuff because they would think you're either one crazy or you're some kind of devil worshiper or whatever. And it just wasn't talked about. But that's what I was talking about earlier in the show when, TV is a double-edged sword. It's good for the field, but it's also bad for the field. And it's good for the field because it's actually become pop culture now, and it's widely accepted to talk about these things. As of, when I first started doing this, you had to watch who you were talking to, what you said. And I didn't even, I never went public with what I did when I was in law enforcement because they would have sent me to the head shrinker. You know what I'm saying? So you have to, it's just, much more widely accepted now. And that's a good thing because that, the more people, that are talking about it and looking into it, that's a good thing.
What's the hottest spot in North America to find a Bigfoot?
You got me, man. There's many. I mean, I got to go, I definitely got to say my home state of West Virginia is one. Of course, you have the skunk ape down in Florida. You've got Pennsylvania is a super hot spot all over, especially the Chestnut Ridge area in Pennsylvania. A good friend of mine, Eric Altman, does a lot of work up in that area. You've got the Pacific Northwest, without a doubt. I mean, Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, all down in that area is very hot for Bigfoot sightings. You have the famous story of the Boggy Creek, the Boggy Creek, the legend of Boggy Creek. That's a crazy story, where all those people had those crazy experiences and whatnot. So, there's just, and like I said, even the swamps of Louisiana and southeastern Texas and all those areas are super hot for Bigfoot sightings.
If you could pick a place that you could go to tomorrow, where would that be?
Well, I don't need to go anywhere, man. I can go in my own backyard.
That's the place. Yeah.
Quite literally, I live on top of a mountain,
right on,
surrounded by millions of acres of woods, and I only live about 4 or 5 miles from the spot that I had my sighting in back in 1983. So, of course, there's times when I go on treks with friends of mine in different areas of the country, and if they're researching a case or we just want to go Bigfooting, man, we, one of us will jump on a plane and we grab our gear and head out, and just do what we do. But that's all part of it,
So how many sightings do you think people have that, or do you know of any other sightings that were like the one when you were a kid? I mean, there was like actual missiles being thrown through the air. And,
yeah, man, there's tons of accounts of people. There's accounts of people just, hiking or whatever, and all of a sudden a fairly large tree branch comes flying at them, or a chunk of wood or rocks. Sometimes they report seeing the creature. Sometimes they never saw what threw the thing at them. So, and there's literally hundreds of those reports all over, man.
That's crazy. It's amazing that guys like you, after having an experience like that, even go into the woods after that, because it's got to be traumatic. But so when you're out looking for a Sasquatch in West Virginia, is it mostly done at night, or are you guys out there in the daytime, or what's your favorite time of day to do that?
Well, I mean, you do both. You got to go out and look for track sign. That's hard to find at night, so if you gotta, you get some fresh reports in an area, and you go trekking out there, you want to go during the daytime so you can try to figure out what direction these things were traveling, what they were doing, and try to pick up a trackway and whatnot, and maybe set up shop out there and try to communicate with them, do some call blasting, do some Woodknocks, whatever you think that you can get a response from. And over the years, I've got some pretty crazy stuff response-wise. I've got Woodknocks and knockbacks, and heard what sounded, some people claim to hear this clacking of rocks. And I recently tried that a couple of years ago and actually heard something similar coming back at me. So when you're out in the middle of the Monongahela National Forest, where there's nobody around for miles upon miles, and you get that, it's pretty hair-raising. You're like, holy crap. And then you hear these ungodly howls and screams out in the middle of the woods that is not a known animal, such as a coyote or anything, or an owl or anything. Because when you hear one, you'll never forget it. It's the most ungodly, frightening thing you'll ever hear.
So when you go out and do an investigation, what's the procedure? What are you taking with you? How long are you out there? And I'm particularly interested in what you do take with you as far as tools of the trade for hunting Sasquatch?
Well, you're not, more than likely, you gotta be rational here. You're probably not going to see one, okay? Because I believe they're highly intelligent, and the size of these things and the power they have is unreal. And I'd say they could probably run 40 miles an hour easily. The size of these things is unreal. But when I go out, what you're trying to do, you're just basically trying to document evidence, whether it's you're documenting calls or voices of these things making noises. You want to try to get some type of interaction. I set up night vision cameras, trap cameras, starting to utilize more FLIR now on drones and whatnot, trying to get some type of capture on film. Everybody wants that smoking gun piece of evidence like the Patterson-Gimlin film. And I think with the way technology is advancing, it could be any day now that somebody has an irrefutable piece of evidence, on a FLIR camera or some night vision cameras or whatever, that we're going to say, all right, this is and I think there's been some pretty compelling footage captured over the years, but with these Bigfoots, it seems like a lot of times the footage is blurry. Some people think they have some kind of ability to affect electronics, and that would make sense if there's some type of interdimensional creature and whatnot. I'm not saying that's what they are, but personally, you're just trying to document evidence of these things. It wasn't that long ago, people say, well, there's no way that type of thing could exist. But listen, they find new species on this planet every day, folks. Just 50 years ago, the mountain gorilla was discovered. And just in 2017, a brand new species of orangutan was discovered in Sumatra. The giant squid was thought to be a mythological creature, and lo and behold, they got live specimens of it. So, you got to remember, don't be closed-minded, stay open-minded, because they find new species every day.
Absolutely. So what are the best photographs or films that you've seen of Bigfoot?
There's a few out there that are pretty awesome. You got to go back to the Patterson-Gimlin film. You can see that this creature has breasts. You can see the muscle striations as it walks in its legs. And, they've had, of course it's going to be a controversy, but you got to remember too, back in those days, even Hollywood special effects people could not make a monkey suit anywhere close to looking what this thing looked like. This thing was the real deal, man. There's no doubt about it. And knowing what I saw versus that, it was spot on, spot on. And it is by far, to me, in my personal opinion, that is the best piece of footage ever captured.
Yeah, I think it's pretty amazing. And when I remember when I first saw it, and it had to have been prior to like 1985, there was a film that came out, and it was at the theaters, and I don't really remember any other film like it, but it was called Bigfoot, and they had that footage in there, and I remember as a kid just being totally blown away, and it kind of made my hair stand on end every time I was in the woods after that.
Yeah. And I've been in the woods many times and hunting. I've grown up in the woods hunting and fishing. And when you're sitting there in a tree stand and you're deer hunting, and you hear the birds singing and squirrels making noise and chipmunks doing their thing, and then all of a sudden everything just stops.
That's
and
crazy.
The hair on the back of your neck stands up, and something's watching you, but you can't see it. It's a very unsettling feeling.
Yeah. What is that? That's like, and even here, you're out there and, or you take off into the woods and you're out there an hour and you finally realize you haven't heard a sound since you've been out there. And normally it's just this huge rush of birds and squirrels chattering. It's pretty amazing. And something's going on out there.
Oh yeah. There's so many things we just don't understand, right? In our own world around us. And, people always say, well, how come we don't see more of them? Well, in my opinion, I think they're small in numbers, number one. Number two, I could hide beside your house behind a tree 20 yards away from you and you'd never know I was there. If these things are intelligent, which we pretty much know they are, they could hide right there in plain sight, and you'd never know. Most people got their head buried in their cell phones. They're worried about the kids, the 9-to-5 job. They're not paying it. Most people do not pay attention to their surroundings whatsoever, and I like to tell that, excuse me. I like to tell that to people because, be more mindful of your surroundings. Throughout my law enforcement and military training, that was one of the things that you were taught. It was pretty much beat into your brain, pay attention to your surroundings, observe everything around you, look up in the sky, always pay attention because you never know what you might see. And there's a lot of truth to that statement. Let me tell you, if you got your head buried in your cell phone and you're not looking around, something could be right there and you can never even see it.
So do you have your own theory as to the origin of this organism that does have characteristics of our distant paleontological cousins?
I don't know, man. I mean, they know, they found the partial fossil of the Gigantopithecus, giant ape, who's to say, man? I mean, there's a lot of, like I said, in all this stuff, you can go so many different directions with it. It's just crazy. I'll give you a crazy one, if you know anything about the giant skeletons that have been found all over the world, and a lot of them have been found right here in West Virginia. Some had double rows of teeth. Some of these skeletons measured 7 to 10 feet tall. And, the Smithsonian swooped in and would take these things and hide them, and to hide history. Now, if you go back to the Bible, it talks about the Nephilim. The Nephilim were the offspring of angels and human women, and they were said to be grotesquely giant creatures that were just some of the most vile things that ever walked the earth. Now, if you think about that, and then you take into account these giant skeletons that have been found all over the world, that's pretty compelling stuff right there. Now, is Bigfoot maybe a possible leftover remnants of those giants? I don't know. So think about it that way. You just got it. There's so many different ways you can think about this stuff and look at it from different perspectives. Just do the research and investigate yourself, and form your own opinions. You never know. You might be onto something.
I want to back up just a little bit. You actually did mention something about an extraterrestrial or interdimensional connection to Bigfoot. Are there people out there that specialize in the relationship between ET and Bigfoot?
There's people that are doing a lot of research, taking eyewitness accounts and researching those accounts and seeing if, trying to put 2 and 2 together to see if there's a definite correlation, and there's reports. You can Google it, man. There's reports all over the place of people seeing what they would call a Bigfoot type creature, and they see strange lights in the sky at the same time or right after, or vice versa, strange lights in the sky and a Bigfoot. There's even a few accounts where people claim to have seen a Bigfoot walk out of a saucer-shaped craft. So, I mean, are these people crazy? I don't know. Until you see something like that, that's the only way. You got to formulate your own opinions, man. But when there's a whole cluster of reports like that, I mean, that's pretty compelling evidence to me.
A lot of people claim that they have evidence. People are out there trying to collect evidence, but I live right outside a national park, and National Park Service sets up fur traps to collect fur here for a DNA count for grizzlies. And basically they take 4 trees and put barbed wire around them with bait in the middle. Anybody ever go out and try to set traps to collect fur?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's traps put up. I put them up. I put food, I put bait out. I put traps out trying to collect evidence like that. And there's been people that I have investigated their sightings and claims where they have discovered strange hair. And on one particular case here in West Virginia, the guy, it's in my book too. It's a pretty interesting case. The guy and his son woke up and it had snowed overnight, and they awoke to a trackway going right through their yard, right past their house. Well, the trackway went under their clothesline, And on that clothesline, they discovered a big tuft of brownish black hair, like dark brown, reddish, and black all mixed together. So they called the local law enforcement, they called the local veterinarian, and they turned this hair in for testing. Well, they never heard anything back. And they, from this testing company that they sent this in, they never got they wouldn't return their phone calls, nothing. They even say, hey, it was a bear, or it was this, or it was that. So it's pretty compelling to me when you don't even get a call back. That's saying something to me right there. Most places you would think scientifically minded people would say, oh yeah, man, that sample you sent in was this, it was a bear, or it was this, whatever. But they never, they wouldn't talk to them, they wouldn't return their phone calls. So that makes me wonder if maybe some government agency stepped in and said, you will not talk to these people about what you've discovered, and so on and so forth. There's a crazy report that came in. You remember when Mount St. Helens blew up in 1982? There was eyewitness accounts that claimed to have seen government helicopters carrying bodies of Bigfoots out of that forest.
Wow.
Numerous accounts. There's also numerous accounts from Vietnam veterans over in Vietnam during the war that had these crazy clashes with these rock apes, as they call them there. And they say that species of these type of apes was very violent and very, they did not mess around. And there's one guy even wrote a book about it, the Vietnam veteran. So, there's also a lot of military people that have claimed when they're on training missions and maneuvers that, I remember this one that pops into my head that, they were on, I think they were in, they were out in the Pacific Northwest somewhere, and they were doing nighttime missions, and they were humping through the woods, and there was a group of Bigfoot paralleling them the whole night. And the guy talked about it and whatnot. So, when you get accounts from people such as military members and law enforcement officers and scientific-minded people that, have something to really lose by even sharing their experiences like that, you have to take those into account, man.
So there are rumors that of a Bigfoot government cover-up because, consumers need lumber, and if we found a legitimate species of Sasquatch in our forest, logging probably, as we know it, would end to save a new species. Have you ever asked that question to anybody in the Forest Service or a government official? How do you feel about that?
They won't talk about that. I've got a friend. It's a story in my book. He's a forester, and he had a crazy experience here. Cutting wood. Saw one, and it changed his life. And so, but most of them, like game wardens and stuff, they'll say, well, I've never seen anything like that. I don't believe in that stuff, or they won't even talk to you about it. It's just, you just never know. In our state, the poor game wardens here, there's like one guy for like every 4, 5, 6 counties. So you can imagine the ground he's got to try to cover, So, you just never know. It seems like there could be a definite government, who's to say it's not some kind of crazy government experiment creature that's gone bad. We don't know. We don't know what these things are.
So what do you do with evidence if you find it? I know that they find a lot of hair, and there's a lot of hair out in the woods, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Bigfoot, but are there labs out there that I'm sure don't gladly take any sample, but would, or is this something that you guys would have to shell out a lot of money to find out?
Well, there's some people that we deal with, in the field that are scientists and whatnot, like Jeff Meldrum and some other folks that have got access to those type of resources. So, that's who I would recommend. If you come across anything like that, get in contact with those gentlemen.
So what kind of evidence are people finding out in the woods on a regular basis that would probably establish some sort of population out there, even though we're not sure what it is?
Well, people, of course, you have, their personal sightings. Then you have tracks and you have hair samples, and you have some crazy claims of these things hitting people's houses and whatnot, attacking them, running off with their livestock like chickens and pigs and everything else, killing dogs. They do not like dogs. They will kill a dog if they have to, and stuff like that. So
what about nests? Because I did watch a show a year ago or so, and they were talking about nests.
Yeah, there's a lot of different structures that are found in some of these hot spots. It looks like it's something very large could have been nesting in there, and that's one of the theories, that they build these elaborate nests, and they also mark their territory with, sometimes like they'll put trees in an X, or uproot an entire tree and stick it in the ground upside down in some cases. So, and if you think about that, the sheer power it would take to do that is unbelievable.
I was thinking about nests, and I spent a lot of time in the woods. I used to work for the Forest Service, and I walked probably thousands of miles. I don't know how many, but over a few years in the wilderness of Montana, and I can't even imagine, because I've snuck up upon black bears, and was literally feet from them, and they had no idea I was there, and I can't imagine what an experience with a Bigfoot would be like. When you're out there, is it apprehension, or do you kind of lose track of time because you're busy with your focus of investigating?
I just do my thing, man, and I don't go in the woods without a heavy caliber firearm. Usually I have a Remington 870 police shotgun with 3-inch magnums, and I carry slugs and double-aught buck, and I also carry a 45 with me as well. Not to say that this would kill this creature, but it would definitely, I think, wake it up a little bit.
So is there reports about people being injured by Bigfoot? I mean, have we heard that?
I think years ago there were some reports that came like that, but usually either people run like hell when they see one, or
yeah, they do.
Sometimes or the Bigfoot gets out of there. In most cases that I've seen, and a lot of the sightings are mostly like happenstance, like someone is riding down the road at night and one runs across the road. I've got reports from coal truck drivers. They drive these large coal trucks out of the state, and they're on these old coal roads that are just gravel roads, and they've people have seen them run across the road. But there's other accounts. A good friend of mine, like the guy I told you about, Eric Altman, he's got an account of an old couple driving down a mountain there, and two of them, they saw two Bigfoots, a young one and an adult. The young one ran across in front of the car, and then the big one stopped, right and dead in front of the car, and then smacked the hood of the car as to say, watch out, or whatever. So, pretty much warning those people about, because there was a little one, a young one, so, I haven't heard of anybody being ripped apart by a Bigfoot. They've claimed that overseas with the Yeti and whatnot. The whole Day at Love Pass incident is an account where they think a possible Bigfoot attack took place and killed those folks. Because supposedly at the end of the reel of film on one of their cameras, there stood a humongous Bigfoot right in the tree line that they took a picture of.
Is there a film right now on YouTube that's fairly recent? And I don't remember when I saw it, but I think it's I know I was somewhere that didn't have adequate Wi-Fi, but it's maybe two or more Bigfoot of different sizes in the snow from a distance walking, and there's some bison in the foreground and background of that. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that one.
That's a pretty good one, and I think there's actually three there, and one of them's significantly smaller than the other two. So just recently, and I'd never even thought about it, but thinking about if there is a propagating species out there, they must have a family, and they must have smaller ones. So how often do you hear of something like that?
I've heard of several accounts over the years. And then there's actually one like that in my book. So, it makes sense, that they would have a family-oriented situation, a breeding population, if you will.
Especially if they're intelligent.
Right, absolutely.
So I put out a message to all my contacts, and I wanted to find somebody who is a Bigfoot expert that I could have on the show, and immediately your name came back, and just your name. So how did you gain that reputation for being the Bigfoot guy?
I don't know, dude. I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't consider myself an expert. I wrote a book about my experiences and many others here in the state of West Virginia. I think there's a lot more people out there better qualified than me scientifically, like Dr. Jeff Meldrum and some others that are studying, not only just the Bigfoot phenomenon itself, but they are going in depth as it being a biological creature. They're looking at the metatarsal breaks in some of these tracks, and they've actually got some tracks that were found years apart that match up perfectly. So it was the same animal hundreds of miles away.
Wow.
So that's very compelling stuff right there. What I do, is I investigate other people's encounters, and I go out and try to document evidence myself.
Do you bring those people with you, or is it something you do by yourself, or do you have a team?
No, I do. I have people I work with, but I don't necessarily go out with a team all the time. A lot of times I'm out there by myself.
So what's coming up for you this summer? You got any really good leads or any really exciting investigations that you have on scheduled?
Oh yeah, man, I'm always out investigating. I got a case right now on the western side of West Virginia on the border of Ohio that's pretty compelling, with some great vocalizations recorded by the homeowner and whatnot. So I'm working on that and several other cases. There's always stuff going on, whether it's hauntings, cryptids, or UFOs, man. I mean, I'm always out and about doing something.
Dave, quickly mention your books again, because I know you have one that's like you said, it's pretty hot right now, and you got more coming out, and what can we expect?
Oh, well, I got the West Virginia Bigfoot. I've also contributed to the Woodknocks series, Woodknocks Volume 2 by David Weatherly. My new book, West Virginia Hauntings Volume 1, has just come out. All these books are available on Amazon, or if you want a signed copy directly from me, you can message me, and I'll tell you how to do it on PayPal. And I got I do own my own haunted house in Indiana that I'm using as a research lab. Got a book coming out on that later this year. And I also got a UFO book in the works that'll be out on West Virginia UFOs and whatnot, and more projects in the way. Also, I'll be featured on a new TV series on History Channel called The Unexplained, with William Shatner as the host, Captain Kirk.
Right on.
So,
do you get to meet him?
No, not yet.
That's
I
too bad.
will later.
Right on.
But
also tell everybody about your website, because I love your website, and there's a video that you can click on right in the middle that's pretty cool. That is very, very well done. Tell them where to go, and also your YouTube channel. Mention that.
Yeah, I have my website is www.davespinks.paranormalinvestigator.com. It has links to all the stuff I'm doing, what TV shows I'll be on, what I've done, what books I've got out, what's coming, the whole 9 yards. Also a group of folks I work with called the Society of the Supernatural, and more, man. I mean, I just got a lot of stuff going on. My YouTube channels are Real Supernatural, and also Society of the Supernatural. Got 2 YouTube channels, and I just started a new YouTube channel that's called West Virginia Monsters. So that'll be featuring a lot of different monsters in the state of West Virginia, like the Grafton County Monster, the Flatwoods Monster, the Mothman, Bigfoot, and more.
So what do you do in your spare time?
I'm with the kids. I'm with the kids and doing that thing.
Right on, man. Paranormal investigator Dave Spinks has been my guest. Dave, keep in touch, my friend. Thanks. It's awesome having you on the show, and good luck to you.
Hey, my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
My Alien Life Podcast.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Elion. You can find all Elion's work online at Heart Dance Records.